Why?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In these difficult circumstances, whilst the cost of living remains high with a backdrop of global uncertainty, increasing fuel duty would be the wrong choice. Not my words as it happens, but I agree with them. In fact, that was what the Chancellor said in her first budget. And having increased taxes by £40 billion in that budget, people might have thought that would have been the end of the talk of fuel tax hikes. But this government's approach is all about higher spending, higher taxation and higher borrowing. So it wasn't that surprising when, in her second budget, the Chancellor set out plans to scrap the 5p litre cut introduced by the Conservative government in 2022. A cut, remember, introduced in the wake of price increases after Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine. When we introduced that cut in recognition that for rural communities like mine in North West Norfolk, a car, a van, is a lifeline. It's not a luxury. Yeah. They connect farmers to market, help children get to school, as my honourable friend referred to, allow people to get to work or health appointments and keep rural enterprises in business. And every penny added to the cost of fuel has a bigger impact in areas where public transport is limited and journeys are longer. This would be the first fuel duty tax rise for 15 years, taking £3.6 billion from hard-pressed motorists. Unless Labour members support our motion, that tax increase will take effect from September this year and see the average family paying £150 more a year. The Road Haulage Association estimates that this increase would add £2,300 a year to the operating costs of an HGV. Little wonder they describe these measures as a hammer blow for many small businesses. But it gets worse, Madam Deputy Speaker. Labour members often like to talk about the last 14 years of Conservative government, but one thing we did over those 14 years was to freeze fuel duty. But from next April, the government will end that freeze and inflation-linked rises will then follow. So that will mark the end of support for motorists that is calculated to have been worth £120 billion over the period of Conservative government. And through this debate, once again, it is the Conservatives speaking up for the British people. When my honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, challenged the Prime Minister about fuel duty increases last week, he wanted to talk about anything but that topic, as he did again this week. But under pressure, he is beginning to shift his position and has said that this increase is now under review. Where is his leadership? It is utterly lacking. And Labour members, where are the Labour members? None on the backbenches prepared to stand up and speak in this debate. Even the honourable member for Rugby is notable by his absence. And they will be whipped today to vote against our motion, like they were on the family farm tax, like they were on winter fuel payment cuts, like they were on having a national grooming gang inquiry, and more. But I suspect, due to their absence, they can sense that another U-turn is coming. And the Minister, once again, is at the dispatch box, having to defend a policy like he did with the family farm tax, which he knows is probably going to be changed again, like the landfill tax 3,000% increase that was also ditched by the government under pressure. It's just that the Prime Minister is too weak to actually make a decision now. He wants to go up to his study and read some more papers alone and ponder it and think about what he should actually do. But when people are feeling increasingly that they're working harder and getting less, and that too many people are being signed off on sickness benefits, the government is making their life harder. On Labour's watch, inflation has increased, unemployment is rising month after month. And Labour members' constituents will see, when they had the opportunity to stand up for families who rely on their cars, to stand up for the white van man, to stand up for people in rural communities, they utterly failed to do so. And when the Chancellor was asked about this fuel tax hike and if she would reverse it, she said something very revealing. She said, "I'm very loath to spend government money on something the market should be doing." Government money? There's no such thing. There's taxpayers' money, but this government considers that everyone's money belongs to the state and they should be thankful to keep some of it. And that attitude explains the £66 billion of tax increases under Labour to fund higher welfare. It explains the failure of the government to control spending and to live within our means. And it explains why the tax burden is at a record high and only going to increase. And the impact is seen in the latest British Social Attitudes Survey, where support for higher spending and taxation is falling, and support for lower taxes and lower spending is growing. And that's the approach that the Conservative Party has set out, making £47 billion of savings in public spending, including £23 billion on welfare. And the Minister can have those ideas for free. And we're using half of that to reduce the deficit and the other half to get the economy growing by scrapping stamp duty, by scrapping business rates for 250,000 leisure, retail and hospitality businesses. But the government is putting up tax at a time of growing uncertainty, and making higher prices is the wrong choice. And that's why I'll be voting to ease the burden on the British motorists and against Labour's fuel duty hike.